we're going to interview Eric Greitens. As I said, Eric was the governor of Missouri, a great governor, and also, as I pointed out, a extremely distinguished history, serving the United States the hard way, putting his life at risk for us. And of the people I've met in politics, he's got to be one of the most dedicated to the proposition, let's do what's right for America, for Missouri, for the people, at any cost. So it's a great honor to talk to him. And also, because right now, the similarities between New York and his home state, Missouri, and his home city, St. Louis, are really, really dramatic because we just got a Soros DA. And they've had one for some time. So, Eric, how would you describe the situation in St. Louis to people around the country who, even now, when we read about St. Louis crime, it takes a while for people to absorb that. We think of St. Louis as meet me in St. Louis. We think of the Cardinals, the great baseball franchise. Even those of us who aren't Cardinal fans respect the dignity and the record of the Cardinals. We think of St. Louis as the gateway to the West. I mean, my first time to St. Louis, I was looking forward to it. So tell me what it's like now.
Well, look, Mr. Mayor, honored to be on with you as always. Missouri is a beautiful state, and St. Louis has always been a beautiful city, but unfortunately, it is a desperate situation now. Kim Gardner is a George Soros funded prosecutor. And when I say that, I know that the left's going to come after me, but the facts are right there. When she ran for election in 2016, over 60%, I actually think it was close to 73% of her funding came from one PAC. That PAC had one donor. That donor was George Soros. George Soros put Kim Gardner in place. And Kim Gardner is a radical leftist. You've been talking about this. Your listeners have seen this around the country. But what happens is these radical leftists encourage violence and refuse to prosecute crimes. All through the summer of 2020, when you had looting, when you had rioting, you had peaceful people engaged in prayer, for example, at the statue of St. Louis, who the city is named after, Louis XIV. They were engaged in prayer at the statue, and you had this radical crowd of activists who came in and beat them. And Kim Gardner did nothing. Nothing to the looters, nothing to the rioters, nothing to the arsonists. And it's worse than that. It's worse than that because she's also gone after the police. She repeatedly attacks the police officers. So what do you see? You see a tremendous rise in violent crime. And, when we talk about these things, people can hear the statistics, a rise in crime. It's so important. And Mr. Mayor, you know this better than anyone because you really led the country in showing how we can reduce crime in major cities. Every single one of those crimes tears a family apart. I'll give you just one very concrete example. Please. When I was governor, Mr. Mayor, I've talked about this. I defeated Antifa. We defeated Black Lives Matter, and we did it in a very simple way. I said that as a Navy SEAL, I defended everyone's constitutional rights. Everyone has the right to freedom of speech. Everyone has the right to freedom of assembly. And I was very clear after we had an incident where a white police officer had shot and killed a black man on duty. I was very clear that anyone who is protesting peacefully, anyone who is assembling peacefully, speaking peacefully, that they would be protected by the police. And indeed they were. But I was also very clear that throwing a brick through a window is not free speech, that if you assault a law enforcement officer, you're going to go to prison. And before I'd become governor, we had an incident in Ferguson, Missouri, which you remember, Mr. Mayor.
Could you give us the dates, Eric? Just give us the dates so we get into the period of time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So Ferguson had actually happened. I came into office in 2016. Ferguson had happened in 2015. And if you remember what happened then, we had a Democrat governor who essentially said that he wanted to give people a safe space to loot and to burn. When I was governor in 2017 and Antifa and Black Lives Matter came to St. Louis, I told them very clearly that if you loot and you burn when I'm governor, the only safe space you're going to have is in a jail cell. And we brought everybody together, police officers, firefighters, National Guard troops. We also worked with leaders in the Black clergy. We worked with a lot of people in the community. And through a combination of courage and compassion and clarity about our fidelity to the Constitution, we defeated Antifa and Black Lives Matter within 3 days. Now, just in the summer of 2020, I was actually on Tucker Carlson's show talking about how we had defeated Black Lives Matter. And after the show, I went out with a friend and we were eating at one of the most beautiful corners in the city of St. Louis. It's a corner of Lindell and Grand. It's near the St. Louis University and Powell Symphony Hall and the Fox Theater, a beautiful church. It's a wonderful corner. We were eating there. And Mr. Mayor, I heard 15 to 25 automatic gunshots go off. It sounded just like when I was in Iraq, in Afghanistan. My buddy is a special operations medic. He jumped in the passenger seat of my car. I carry a pistol and a med kit. We drove about 50 yards to the scene. We were the first two guys on the scene, and we started working on the casualties who were there. There's two young men who had been shot. Now, unfortunately, both of those young men died that day. These were great kids, 20, 21 years old, not a parking ticket between them. Both of them working through the whole coronavirus pandemic. They'd done internships, had bright futures ahead. I went and I met with both of their families because, of course, the parents wanted to know what their son's last moments were like, as did their brothers. And I talked with them, and they obviously said that they were hoping for justice. The St. Louis Police Department worked on the case. They worked on that case for almost a year. Eventually, they found the car that was used in the shooting. They found the fingerprints of the killer in the car. They found the killer, and they brought him in, and he gave a videotaped confession to every element of the crime, and every element of his confession matched all of the videotaped evidence from the scene of the crime. So the police take all of this to the Soros-funded prosecutor. They take the car, the fingerprints in the car, the videotaped confession, the videotaped evidence from the scene of the crime, and the Soros-funded prosecutor says, I'm not going to do anything about that. She literally turns a murderer loose back onto the streets. And Mr. Mayor, I believe that's evil. And I believe that is what we are facing in these Soros-funded prosecutors. And as you know, it's led to the highest increase, the largest increase year on year in the homicide rate in the entire country. Thousands of Americans were murdered because of this radical leftist defund the police movement.
So Eric, first thing I'd like to note, because you passed over it very, very quickly, because I know you're a Navy SEAL. I know you're someone who's put your life at risk for this country numerous times, and you don't talk about it like Navy SEALs don't talk about it. But I'm going to point out something you said that's enormously significant. You heard gunfire, you heard shots. It reminded you of being overseas in a war, and you and your friend drove toward it. Most Americans, and rightfully so, because they wouldn't know what to do, would drive away. That's a very significant difference between you and most Americans. And you know I have the utmost respect for you. And that little statement is pregnant with all kinds of meaning. But in any event, you said you defeated them in 3 days. So since in my city, we went through it for 6 months. And was it Seattle or Portland that had that Chad? It was Portland, right?
Right.
They had that
Well,
city.
Seattle had the Chaz, and then Portland had months on months of that violence. Exactly, sir.
How did you do it in 3 days? How much equity do you have in your home? 50,000, 100,000, more? Cybercrime experts are alerting homeowners that the more equity you have, the greater the chance foreign and domestic criminals will come after you. Title theft is one of the fastest growing crimes. Home Title Lock, America's leader in home title protection, is alerting homeowners they could already be a victim and not know it. Here's how it goes down. First, cyber thieves search hundreds of public databases for high equity homes. Next, they pull your home's title that's online. They forge your signature stating you sold your home, and they take out loans using your equity. You're not covered by insurance, your bank, or common identity theft programs. Protect your most valuable asset. Register your address now to see if you're already a victim and receive a complete title history of your home, a $100 value free. Go to HometitleLock.com. That's HometitleLock.com.
Well, the way we did it, Mr. Mayor, was very simple. It was a combination of clarity, compassion, and courage. The clarity, as I said, was that we were very clear with everyone that if you are protesting peacefully, our police officers are going to go out and they're going to protect you. They're going to protect your constitutional rights. And indeed, in the morning when people are out protesting peacefully, our police officers did a fantastic job. Our bicycle police officers were out there making sure that they were stopping traffic for people who were protesting. They actually handed water to some of the protesters when it was hot. They did a fantastic job protecting people's constitutional rights. So first we had that clarity. And the other part of that clarity was I was very clear that if you throw a brick through a window, you're going to be arrested. If you assault a police officer, you're going to go to jail. So everybody knew the rules right up front. The second thing that was important was compassion. Look, I had worked with a lot of Black clergy in the city of St. Louis. I'd worked with them. I'd worked with other community leaders, and I came down ahead of ahead of this incident. And I'd been walking some of the most violent streets of the city of St. Louis with these men at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. They knew me. They trusted me. And this was all rooted in that Stockley incident. And the night before the verdict came out from the judge, I got on stage with the fiance of the man who'd been shot, and I put my arm around her and I said, listen, there are a lot of people who are going to feel a lot of different ways tomorrow morning, no matter what the verdict is. And when it comes down, again, as long as people are exercising their rights peacefully, we're going to be there for you, protecting those rights as your fellow citizens. So we were compassionate and understanding. But then we also were extraordinarily courageous. We had the backs of our police officers, and we let them know that if there is violence, they are to move in and put it to an end. We brought up all the prison buses from Southeast Missouri, so we had plenty of buses to arrest as many people as were necessary. Because what Antifa and Black Lives Matter said is they said, well, we're going to beat Greitens. We're going to beat the governor. We're going to bring so many people in from around the country that he can't possibly arrest all of us. But we were very clear that if you do this, if you break windows, you're going to be arrested. And what happened was after 3 days, because they weren't allowed to riot, because they weren't allowed to loot, because they weren't allowed to engage in arson, and there was nothing for the media to cover, all of that energy died away. We supported our police officers. We had their backs, and they did a fantastic job on the front lines, and they shut this down.
Now, how did the district attorney, who I guess would be Gardner, right?
Yes, correct.
And the judges, who up until that point had seemed to have been irresponsibly lenient, how did they react? How did they react to this? Did they deal with it in a fair way, or just let everybody go free?
Well, Gardner was terrible. Kim Gardner has always been terrible. She's the George Soros funded prosecutor. And for example, when I brought the Missouri State Highway Patrol into the city of St. Louis, it had never been done in recent memory by a governor before. When I brought the State Highway Patrol in to patrol Missouri's highways in the city of St. Louis, and I again went out on the front lines with those police officers along with my director of public safety. We went out on the front lines, and those men and women in the Highway Patrol did a fantastic job. And they were not just pulling people over who were speeding. They found felons who were carrying weapons. They found illegal drugs. When they brought those charges to Kim Gardner, again, she refused to prosecute. So what you find time after time, what these Soros-funded prosecutors do is they refuse to prosecute crimes. It is selective, it is political, and it is fundamentally anti-American, and it also violates their oath to justice. A prosecutor is supposed to enforce the law. They don't get to choose which laws they enforce, and you know that better than anyone, Mr. Mayor. But what these Soros-funded prosecutors do is that they let the Black Lives Matter and Antifa activists go. They let murderers loose onto the streets. And it's important for people to recognize this isn't because of a difference in political philosophy. This isn't because they're confused. There is no way to describe this. There's no way to describe letting a murderer loose onto the streets other than evil. That's what it is, and we need to stand up and defeat it.
Well, Governor, they did a horrible, horrible, unthinkable thing to you, very similar to what they did to my client, Donald Trump. In fact, I'd almost see it as a, John the Baptist, and then the forerunner. And now, when it happened to you, it was novel and shocking. Now it's almost par for the course. I mean, they framed so many people, but they framed you. I'm going to get to that, but I just want to ask you the question that I think everyone wants to know the answer to. After having gone through that, after having seen how, and I'm glad you used the word evil, how evil some of these opponents can be, why do you want to run for the Senate?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I want to run because I want to do what I did as governor, what I did as a Navy SEAL, and what I did for my fellow veterans when they came home from Iraq and Afghanistan and they were injured, they were disabled. I want to do what I did when I did humanitarian work, when I worked in Cambodia and Rwanda and Bosnia with kids who'd lost their parents. I want to fight for people who need to be fought for. And right now in this country, the left is on the attack, and rhinos in the establishment are failing the people of Missouri. I'm running to fight for the people of Missouri, to fight against Joe Biden's policy of weakness overseas, which has led to this military disaster in Afghanistan. I'm going to fight for the people of Missouri against Joe Biden's policy of open borders, which is terrible, against all of this defund the police nonsense. I'm going to stand up and fight for the people of Missouri. And I believe, Mr. Mayor, that we only have one life. And at the end of that life, we have to look back on it. And I believe that we should all lead purpose-filled lives, as you have, sir, as you have for generations. Live a purpose-filled life through to the end of our days. And that's what I believe I'm called to do in this moment.
Well, they've already, attacked you, but not quite the way they did before, because a lot of the strength of it have been taken out by the fact people should know that the agent that helped Kim Gardner frame you is about to go to trial for 8 counts of lying about you, perjury.
So what happened is this George Soros funded prosecutor attacked me after we defeated Antifa and Black Lives Matter. It was a vicious, nasty attack where they worked along with the media. But the good news is, number one, the Soros funded prosecutor was found guilty by the Office of the Chief Disciplinary Counsel of over 70 instances of perjury for creating a false case against me. And she is set to have a hearing to lose her law license next month in February of 2022. William Tisby, who is a former FBI agent, who she chose to be her handpicked investigator to create a false case against me, he's been charged with 7 felonies for perjury and evidence tampering for creating a false case against me. Also, journalists have now admitted that they paid cash bribes of $120,000 at least. That's just what we know of. At least $120,000 in cash bribes to people who lied about me. So all of these facts are now public, and the Missouri Ethics Commission did the longest investigation in their history. It was over 20 months, 23 subpoenas, 8,500 documents. And at the end of all of that, sir, they came out and they said, we found no evidence of any wrongdoing by Eric Greitens. So I've been exonerated. The Soros-funded prosecutor and her investigator are now on trial. And I believe that sometimes God hands us pain that we don't want. He hands us suffering that we don't want. But on the other side of that, there's wisdom. On the other side of that, there's strength. I feel incredibly blessed to have been attacked this way by the George Soros funded machine, because it has absolutely opened my eyes to the real evil that we have to defeat if we want to preserve our republic.
Well, Eric, that organization you're talking about, the private organization that did the investigation, who makes up that organ? Who are the members of that organization?
Yeah, so that is the Missouri Ethics Commission, which oversees, the Missouri Ethics Commission oversees all of the campaign finance, all of the kind of political activities here in the state of Missouri. And they were the ones who said, again, they found no evidence of any wrongdoing. And of course, that's after the George Soros funded prosecutor is now facing this trial to lose her law license, and her lead investigator has been charged with 7 felonies. And I think it just goes to show how evil the left will be. We need to recognize they're not playing by any normal set of rules. They have complete disregard for the rule of law. They're willing not just to do that to me, they're willing to let murderers loose on the streets.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
You know, and you and I are fortunate in some ways where we have supporters. You know, we have a large, because of being in the military in your case, and now politics for a bit, and in my case, being a prosecutor and being in politics, we have a set of supporters who help us. But there are an awful lot of people who don't have that. I think of Mr. Papadopoulos and Carter Page, and these people were ruined. They were bankrupted. They were destroyed, and nobody would believe them because they didn't have a cadre of people to speak up for them like you had, or the resources that are available. And even with that, you're lucky you were able to bring it out. There's an axiom in the law that says it's almost impossible to prove the negative. Well, you did. You proved the negative, as President Trump proved the negative. But you can't always count on that. I mean, these people are destroying our republic. Not long ago, Mike Lindell, the inventor of MyPillow, and his team fit me for my very own MyPillow. They also introduced me to their wide assortment of other incredible products, like their mattress topper, their sheets, towels, slippers, and more. Sleep is incredibly important to me, and I can assume for all of you. It's time you give MyPillow a try and see for yourself. Listeners have helped build MyPillow into the incredible company it is today, and Mike Lindell wants to give back to all of you. You can get great discounts on MyPillow products by going to MyPillow.com right now and seeing each of the specially priced items, including those in the radio listener special square. You're going to see rotational offers up to 66% off on products like their pillows, mattress topper, Giza sheets, but also new products like their slippers, weighted blankets, robes, and waffle blankets. All MyPillow products come with a 60-day money-back guarantee. Enter promo code RUDY for these great specials. That's MyPillow.com and use the promo code RUDY.
They are destroying the republic, sir. And what's really, what I think everyone gets at a base gut level is how wrong this is. To have these political prosecutions smacks of leftism. You know, the head of Joseph Stalin's secret police used to say, "Show me the man and I'll show you the crime." Meaning that when the communists pointed their finger at someone, they would go and accuse them of crimes. And essentially, that's what we now have in certain places around the United States of America, especially with these George Soros funded prosecutors. And exactly as you said, Mr. Mayor, I'm fortunate. I've been extraordinarily blessed, not just because of my military background, because of the things that I'd seen doing humanitarian work, because of the people who I have who are supporting me, but everyday average people can also have the finger pointed at them. We've seen this happen to police officers around the country who get attacked by these George Soros funded prosecutors, and they try to destroy your lives. I fought against Al Qaeda, I fought against ISIS, we faced off against Jamaat Islamiyah and Abu Sayyaf around the world. And in some ways, that is a more straightforward fight. When Al Qaeda hit me with a truck bomb, a suicide truck bomb in Iraq, it was very clear they were coming to kill me. What happens with the left in the United States of America is that they actually employ the state, they employ the government and then they use the media to make false accusations and to attack people. And we have to stand up and defeat them if we're going to keep our republic.
Well, I think it is admirable that you're running for the Senate, because I know over the next 6 years when you're in the Senate, like Rand Paul, like Ted Cruz, I think of a few of them. They're just a few of them. You're going to be. I remember Rand Paul questioning Fauci when Fauci got angry because he said, "Oh, this might subject me to death threats." And I think Rand Paul legitimately lost his temper, which he rarely does. He said, "You're going to be subjected to death threats. They've actually attacked me and beaten me up. They've attacked my wife. They threatened my children. They threatened to bomb my car. And all I'm doing is asking you a question about whether you funded, gain of function research. So I'm sorry, Dr. Fauci, but I'm just not. You're like I'm the wrong person for you to say this to. But you know this. I've said it to you, so let me say it to the audience. The reason I'm so enthusiastic about your candidacy is not just my warm personal regard for you, and also the fact that I know you'll be a really good senator for Missouri. You're going to be a great senator for the United States because you love the United States, and you have extraordinary gifts. You're a very smart man. You're a very well-educated man. You're a very well-read man. You're a very balanced man, and you have the great gift of being a great speaker. And this is what we need. We need to fight back.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am honored to have your support, especially given everything that you have done for our country. And you're right, it is a beautiful country. And I was honored to fight for our country and to serve as a Navy SEAL in Iraq and Afghanistan, in Southeast Asia, and the Horn of Africa. I've also done humanitarian work overseas in places like Bosnia, Rwanda, Cambodia, Albania. I've been in Chiapas, Mexico. I've been in the Gaza Strip. I've been around the world, and I've seen how precious the United States of America is, the true miracle of what our founders created. And as the man who you served, Ronald Reagan, always said, freedom must be preserved in every generation. And now is the time. Now is the time for all of us. You've done your part, Mr. Mayor. You continue to. I'm going to do my part. And now is the time for every patriotic American, for every American who believes that the republic is worth preserving, for every American who wants to pass something better on to their kids and their grandkids. It is now the time to come off of the sidelines and engage in this fight, because we must defeat leftism in this generation. Come out to ericgreitens.com. It's EricGreitens.com. There you can sign up for updates from the campaign. You can make a financial investment in the campaign. You can find out how to volunteer for the campaign. And we would be honored to have everyone who believes in America, everyone who believes that it is worth fighting for freedom, to come out and to join us in this campaign, sir.
And now you are at the primary stage. Your primary is decided rather late. For example, As you know, my son is running for governor, and he was with me on Saturday when we were together with you, and I really see great similarities between the two of you. And since you're a bit older, I expect you to mentor him.
I'd be honored to, sir. It would be an honor to. He's incredibly capable as it is, but anything that I might offer or add, of course, I'd be
But
honored to,
but
sir.
so they can donate that way, they can volunteer that way, and also what what's the primary message that you want to get across to people about your candidacy? When we think about Eric Greitens, I know what I think, but I'm talking now people who are learning about you. What what do you want them to know?
Well, Mr. Mayor, what I want people to know, and especially patriots, is that there are real reasons for hope. Right now, because of all the lies that are pushed by the propaganda press, because of all the lies from the mainstream media, because of the craziness of Joe Biden's policies, because of the COVID tyranny, so many people are in despair. And I want people to know that there are so many, and I get to see it when I'm campaigning, tens of thousands of Americans who feel just like they do, that this is a republic worth fighting for. And I want them to know that I am going to fight for them. I'm going to fight against Joe Biden and the leftists, and I'm also going to fight against the rhino establishment, which continues to
Please,
stab the American
thank
people
you,
in the back. We have to. We got to recognize it's not just the leftists who come with all of their craziness. The
thank you.
problem is when they're enabled by the rhino establishment. That
God
is what
bless you.
really hurts the American people, and the people around the country and in the state of Missouri know I'm going to fight for them. That's why we're up 30 points in the Republican primary, and we're up in the general election by 13 points. So we, God willing, with the support of your listeners, we're going to win this race, and we're going to take back our republic.
Well, my listeners will be a part of it, but it's a much bigger movement than that. And it fits in beautifully to the movement we need to save America from the express train to Marxism. I'm going to conclude with what I should have begun with, but I wanted to get right into it. Just give us a brief description of your background, which is extremely impressive.
Yes, sir. Well, I was born and raised in Missouri. My mom was an early childhood special education teacher. My dad was an accountant. He worked for the Department of Agriculture, had fantastic teachers and coaches growing up. And the wonderful education that I received enabled me to get a scholarship. I went to Duke University as an
Like
undergrad.
Andrew,
And
like my son.
yes, and that's also where I started boxing. I started boxing in a gym in Durham, North Carolina. Got a fantastic education both in the classroom and in the boxing gym. And it was also at Duke where I first started traveling overseas. I'd never been outside of the country before, but after my freshman year, I went to China. It's maybe a story for another podcast, but I ended up getting arrested there for teaching about the Constitution in China. This was in 1993. I went to work in Bosnia after the ethnic cleansing there to work with children who had been separated from their parents, either because their parents had been killed or they'd been separated during the refugee movement. I worked in Rwanda shortly after the genocide, and I really had the beautiful opportunity to see what a fantastic country we have here. I was honored to receive a Rhodes Scholarship. I went to Oxford University, ended up doing a PhD there, studying how international humanitarian organizations work with children in war zones. So continued to work with Mother Teresa in one of her homes for the destitute and dying in India, worked in Albania, worked in Cambodia. And then I continued to box at Oxford, which was a great experience. And then when all of that came to an end, when I finished my education, I joined the United States Navy. And I was in SEAL team training when September 11th happened, sir. When you were carrying the entire world on your shoulders, sir, I was just on a 2-mile ocean swim in Coronado, California, when we learned about September 11th, which of course meant for all of us who were in SEAL team training that our class was going to be going to war. I did 4 deployments in the global war on terrorism. I came home from Iraq after my team had been hit by a suicide truck bomb. I was very fortunate. My wounds were minor, but a lot of guys on my team were hurt far worse than I was. And I donated my combat pay and started an organization called The Mission Continues to help our returning veterans continue their mission of service by being active, engaged citizens working at Habitat for Humanity, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Clubs, continuing to serve their fellow citizens here at home. And then, when I saw that my state was struggling, I stepped up, had never been involved in politics before, ran for and was honored to serve the people of Missouri as their governor. And now I'm running for and will be honored to serve the people of Missouri as their United States Senator.
Hopefully, you become the prototype of the citizen politician like we used to have. You think of that wonderful background you have of experience, which could be a thousand other things, but gives you, and then you bring that to the Senate. That's how we conceived of this government originally. And then we ended up with, cradle to grave politicians. And this is a great opportunity for our country to help begin the process of redefining ourselves the way we used to be. And Eric, you have my support, and anything that I can do, or my listeners, or my friends, we are over the top enthusiastic about you. And this election just has to happen. And I think now every listener of mine, if they just spend the time listening to this interview, you're going to have however many I have, they're going to be with you. God bless you for doing this. And God bless you for your service for this country, in which somehow you had to put aside the fear of death in order to protect us. God bless you.
Thank you, sir, and God bless you.